The World Health Organization has officially sought a detailed report from China on an increase in respiratory illnesses and cases of pneumonia in children. This move came after there was widespread media reports that the Chinese hospitals have been overwhelmed with sick children. A major outbreak of pneumonia is escalating in cities, particularly in the northern part of the country, including the capital, Beijing. In its statement, the WHO said that Chinese authorities from the National Health Commission had reported an increase, a sudden increase, in the incidence of respiratory diseases in China. Chinese authorities attributed this to cases that are rising because of the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions and the circulation of known pathogens like influenza virus, Mycoplasma pneumoniae, that's a common bacterial infection which typically affects younger children, respiratory syncytial virus, the RSV, and the SARS-CoV-2, which was the virus that caused COVID-19. Since the middle of October, northern China has reported an increase in influenza-like illnesses compared to the same period over the last 3 years, which is why this is being seen as slightly abnormal. Now, according to a report in the UK-based The Telegraph newspaper, ProMed, which is a large publicly available surveillance system which monitors human as well as animal disease outbreaks worldwide, issued a notification late Tuesday which specified the rise of undiagnosed pneumonia in children in northern China. That report said that it was a ProMed alert way back in December of 2019 that brought a mystery virus, which was later named SARS-CoV-2, to the attention of many doctors and scientists, including officials at the World Health Organization. The latest post by ProMed was based on a report from the Taiwanese news outlet FTV News. That report said that hospitals in the capital of China, Beijing, and in Liaoning province, which is almost 500 miles northeast of Beijing, was struggling amidst an influx of children who were sick with pneumonia. Many of them are hospitalized. They do not have cough or any other regular symptoms. All they have is very high temperature causing fever. Many of them also develop pulmonary nodules. Doctors who were treating these kids were quoted as identifying these very limited symptoms. This is according to the report that was put by FTV News. Now, as a consequence of that, sick children are not allowed to report to school. If they have any symptoms like fever or cold, cough, then they are hospitalized and then one can ask for leave. Local media reported that the lobby of the Dalian Children's Hospital in Liaoning was full of sick children receiving intravenous drips. Patients have had to wait in line for 2 hours, and everybody, including their family members, are all in emergency care, and there are no general outpatient clinics at this time at the Dalian Hospital. In an editor's note, ProMed also said that the outbreak could be linked to Mycoplasma pneumonia, which is also known as walking pneumonia. One of the reasons for this sudden outbreak, at least from the Chinese health officials, is China is now officially entering its first winter without any stringent COVID-19 restrictions in place. The Telegraph report also said that other countries, including the UK and the US, saw similar surges in diseases like RSV and the flu pandemic once these restrictions for COVID-19 were lifted. One of the reasons for this is that suppressed circulation over the last many years, which has now hit immunity amongst the general population, has suddenly surfaced back within the general population. Symptoms of walking pneumonia, which generally affects younger children, include sore throat, fatigue, and a lingering cough that can last for weeks, sometimes up to months. In severe cases, they can eventually deteriorate into pneumonia. The reason why everyone is concerned about this story is because of China's past record, particularly from 3 years ago at the start of the COVID-19 outbreak. The initial outbreak of COVID-19 happened in Wuhan in northeast China. It raised numerous questions about transparency and accountability, or the lack of it, by Chinese authorities. Allegations have circulated since, which have not been fully redressed by the Chinese authorities, who were accused of engaging in a cover-up particularly in the early stages of the pandemic. The Wuhan Institute of Virology, where the virus is believed to have originated, came under scrutiny for its lack of transparency. Concerns were raised about the integrity of the information that was coming out from Chinese authorities. Some reports had suggested that the initial cases were either downplayed or they were simply concealed. Whistleblowers like Dr. Li Wenliang, who attempted to alert the public about the virus, faced deep suppression by the Chinese authorities. Li, who's an ophthalmologist in Wuhan, was reprimanded by the Chinese police for spreading false information in the early stages of the pandemic outbreak. Tragically, Dr. Li Wenliang succumbed to the virus in February of 2020, and that sparked international outrage. The Wuhan Institute of Virology, where the virus is believed to have originated from, faced accusations of not being above board in its research practices. Questions also arose about the safety protocols that were in place and whether the institute had adequately disclosed information about the ongoing research on coronaviruses. Some theories even suggested the possibility of a laboratory leak from the Wuhan Institute or any of the N number of institutes where work on coronaviruses was going on in China. But there was no conclusive evidence supporting the lab leak theory. Both the WHO, which had detailed investigations into this, and also separately a US government probe into the initial leak of the coronavirus, did not find conclusive evidence to back the lab leak theory. But the WHO team also did not get full access to all the labs and all the researchers who were working on coronaviruses in late 2019, early 2020. World Health Organization also faced criticism for its handling of the early stages of the pandemic. Initially, the WHO in fact praised China for its transparency, but as more and more information emerged, it became evident that there were gaps in the data that was being provided by Chinese health officials. The WHO was accused of being caught unawares and also overly reliant on China's data reporting, and that led to delays in understanding the severity of this virus and even the very nature of the spread of this disease. One other theory was that the virus emerged from one of the wet markets in Wuhan, that the virus spread from animals onto humans via exotic seafood that was being sold in that market. But the wet market theory too, which was initially cited as the source of the virus, that has also faced skepticism. While early cases were linked to the seafood market in Wuhan, later reports suggested that some of the early cases had no direct connection to the wet market. This has also raised doubts about the market actually being the origin of this virus, and that has led to further speculation about other potential sources, and one of which was whether this was man-made and deliberately leaked onto the human population from one of the many labs that were investigating coronaviruses. The global response to the pandemic was significantly impacted by these uncertainties and the lack of transparency on the part of Chinese authorities. Now, the lack of information coming in from China also hampered efforts to try and understand and contain this virus promptly. The events surrounding the initial outbreak also underscored the importance of international cooperation between different agencies, transparency and accountability in responding to global health crises. The lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic will have to be put to good use during this current outbreak of what many are calling walking pneumonia. Whether the spread of this round of pneumonia will be contained to specific regions of China and to specific segments of the population, in this case younger kids, or whether it will spread further around the world depends entirely on how transparent China is with the origins of this latest break. At least the hope is that China, the World Health Organization, and global health officials who are involved in the business of stopping and preventing further outbreaks of viruses would have learnt their lessons from 3 years ago. Because if they haven't, then the world would be lesser off for it.